AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Brand new to you, holiday edition. JP Boghossian is kind enough to join us. This queer book saved my life, The Gaily SHow. Brand new since the beginning of December right here on AM 950. He's kind enough today to talk about the shows as well as also the year in the LGBTQ culture as we have seen it, because there's been goods and bads, and we'll talk about all of that here. But JP, it's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you. Thank you for having me back.
My pleasure. You know, the last time you and I saw you at that little social gathering we had a few months back, right?
Yeah.
I saw you there, and I mentioned to someone, you know, the sign that your show, remember I told you, your show is important. This queer book saved my life. That show is important because I told some people, it's like, yeah, I saw JP, and they're like, you know him? I said, yes. And these are you know, people who are not gay, but listen to your show because they say it's such. They have friends who are gay, family members who are gay, and it gives them a great insight to the perception from the culture, from their perception and their perspective. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that to you because your show is pretty darn good, man. I'm very impressed.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You've been back on, talk about bringing back to AM 950 earlier in December here.
Yeah, we are officially back. We came back on December 2nd. We are in a new date and time slot at 2 p.m. on Saturdays. And it's actually very exciting because we're kind of coming together with a variety of other queer-related shows, which is very exciting to have that partnership and that investment with AM 950. But what's new this time around, actually, is that we have episodes of This Queer Book Saved My Life, and then to round out the hour, if you will, we have a new show called The Gaily SHow, which is celebrating LGBTQ culture and entertainment right here in Minnesota with some headlines and, you know, fun stuff that are happening, you know, throughout the country and the globe if it is important to us here in Minnesota.
With the Gaily Show, is that always something you've wanted to do? Because obviously gay culture when it comes to the arts is something that is, you know, prevalent everywhere. And in Minneapolis, St. Paul's got a pretty thriving scene as well. So is this something that you've always wanted to do, kind of a show on this level?
You know, if you would ask my 12-year-old self that at this age I'd be doing that, I'd be, like, petrified. But this is actually I'm really happy to be in this role where I can help uplift folks. I was as I've been getting the word out and telling, like, you know, my friends in my network, like, hey, that are artists or, you know, musicians and all that stuff, like, here's what's happening. And I had one friend that was like, I just told my entire network, and I'm actually hopeful that some artistic directors in town, this will help them start to pick and produce more queer content because they've got a platform now and a partner in the community that can help get the word out. And I was like, yes, let that be, you know, how can we get more, you know, artists out there and have folks choose to do more of this work? And so, you know, here we go, this partnership with AM 950. Hopefully we can make a difference.
Well, and I got to want to be honest with one of the reasons why I love this station so much is that it is so eclectic.
Yes,
we have so many different voices out there. And as a matter of fact, one of the things which I really like is that we try to find the voices that are not being represented and get them on the air with us. And of course, you have This Queer Book Saved My Life, The Gaily SHow. You know, you putting that together. You and I talked a little bit about this before as well. The normalization of this is that the problem that we have with, you know, some of the closed-minded people that are out there is they don't want this normalized. And listening to these shows, you realize it's as normalized as anything, and that's why it's so important. It's basically saying, no, this isn't fringe. These are just people, and this is this is what it is. And you know what? You don't have to be part of any specific, you know, demographic to address. Everyone can enjoy this because that's the kind of the whole point of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of get bothered by the fact that people look at this as a like Robert Pilot's show or a Pat Vasquez's show or something like this. And it's like, okay, you're just, you know, kind of niche. And I said, no. This is just good programming. Yeah. And if you're listening to it, you're going to listen to this station through the day. I mean, minus that crap fest is my show in the afternoon. But I mean, the rest of these shows, you will you will basically be smarter. And smarter in a really tricky way because you'll understand things from a different perspective. And I think that's the real trick.
Well, I think it's about recognizing other people's humanity. And for queer people growing up surrounded by, you know, straight and cis media, we consume it and we've learned to see ourselves in it. And we take away lessons from that and we take away joy from that. And I think it's hard for some folks when they've been stigmatized from so little, you know, from 4 years old, 5 years old to not treat us as human, then it's hard for them to watch our art and read our books and watch our films and see themselves reflected in it. They're like, well, that's not for me. You know, that's not humanity. That's them. it's like, well, no, we have a shared humanity here, and there's absolutely things that you can get out of this about what it's like to live and love in this world, whether you're straight, cis, trans, or whatever.
Well, and when I was a kid, if the character in a play or a movie was gay, that was the point of it. Today, it's changed. It's just it's a character in the play, and it doesn't necessarily. There's no plot points per se. It's just the person.
Yeah.
And I think that is the real concept of acceptance. Is that when I go to the MIA and I see artists there, it's not just the special wing with this type of artist. It's just okay. Here's the Picasso. Here's boom.
Right.
I think that's what's changing. Is that it's not something that it's one thing obviously to highlight it, and obviously the gay community should be proud and loud and saying all these things and having their own elements of it. But when it just is weaved into the fabric of every other culture, that's the success ratio, and that's why your program, other programs like it, are so important.
Yeah, it is very, when I was growing up, so, a late Xer, just seeing a queer character on a TV show or in a film was, what? And usually it was, either they either died or they were, there for comedic relief, and, they never, were servicing the main storyline. They were never the point of the TV show or the book or whatever. And to now be in this space where it's actually hard I'm like, I don't have to fill time. I have to cut. Like, what am I going to include in the Gaily show? You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much that's out there, and there's so much that like you said, is pervasive within just shows now. It's like, it's almost expected. Like, if I watch a show and I'm like, wait a minute, there isn't a queer character in here? Like, it's just gotten to that point where, our media is reflecting what our life is like, that you and I or anybody that lives in the Twin Cities or in Duluth or St. Cloud experiences. So it's really wild over my lifetime and I'm of an age where I have seen that shift to go from like literally seeing one person represented an entire year to I literally cannot keep up.
Well, and by the way, yeah, it's the same thing. It's like if you got a cast with 8 to 10, guess what? That's kind of there should be someone in there. Yeah. That's for sure. Here's the real question I'm going to have, and you just kind of touched on it. 15 minutes. Good luck. I think you are definitely trying to jam a full sandwich right in there, man. I could easily see in this town. I could easily see a much longer show. I mean, great. I'm glad we're starting it off with 15, but I mean, you are going to have so many opportunities and so many people that are definitely going to want to get part of that show.
Yeah, it's so it actually fluctuates based off of because this Queer Book Saved My Life is a podcast, right? And so I just let it go where it goes, and that's what I love about that show is that, if we go for a full hour, we go for a full hour. If we go for it's a meaty 20 minutes, then it's a meaty 20 minutes. And so the Gaily show then fluctuates responsive to that, right? So some episodes are, 27 minutes and some episodes are 15. And it is – we'll see where it goes. I mean, maybe it does, become its own thing. But right now, it's really nice to be able to kind of use it as this touch point that people can go to, and they can be, I didn't know about, that film. I didn't know about that book is coming out, next Tuesday, and stuff like that. And also to be able to start to bring in local folks and have interviews and conversations is also really exciting as well. So to kind of have that, if you missed it, here's an opportunity to hear about it. Or if it's coming up and you get to have that conversation. And, we had an interview with Leslie Vincent about her Christmas concert. And I was not expecting for her to do this, like, weird song that she told me about. And I literally, my eye, like you can see on the video of it, if you go to, AM50's YouTube channel, my eyes literally bug because she was talking about, they did a song about this, Austrian legend of a woman at Christmas who was told, like, there's a whole theme that's like capitalism, like if you don't do your job, you're going to have like rocks put in your stomach or something like that. And it was this wild, crazy, I'm like, this is a Christmas tradition? She's like, yeah, we made a Christmas song out of it. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, think Melania's White House Christmas. I mean, there's a darkness that comes. I lived in Germany for a few years. There's a darkness that comes with the holidays there. That
right?
Look. The tea that tastes horrible. Thank you. I'll take some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's this really twisted Christmas carol. Which I mean, go back and listen to the interview because it's wild. I'm not even doing it service right now and describing it.
Absolutely. Well, you want to? I do love some of that stuff. I mean, I was at Minnesota Historical Society had an old You Don't Hear Them Christmas Carol concert. The Christmas Carol, this was about 4 or 5 years ago, that they didn't hear it. I do love some of these old world traditions, and the fact is that our art community in this town is so vibrant. I'm glad people are revisiting stuff. Hey, look, it's the Rockin' Stomach Christmas story. Let's do that one,
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about the cities, I think, is that it's such a – people don't know the dynamism that's here. You know what I mean? I think people like that whole flyover country, But it's really exciting where it's not just trying to get representation. Folks can be really experimental with stuff, And I think obviously the tradition of having Prince here, that he did that work of, and so many others that are, they come here and they are able to experiment and do things like, let's dig up old Christmas carols that you haven't heard in so long that are kind of twisted and dark to them.
This queer book saved my life. Let's mention that really quick. New season going on right now. So, any thoughts on the season so far? I mean, where you are going with some of these books and stuff like that? Anything that stands out?
Oh, I'm really excited to have. There's some episodes coming up here where for example, there's one author, and he's Australian, wrote this amazing book. About the homosexualization of America, right? So he's this Australian looking at this, the U.S. and what has happened, to the LGBTQ culture. But when I got to dive into he's in his 80s now, and to dive into his history, prepping for that interview, and to see him on ABC, which is Australian Broadcast Corporation. He's 23 years old, wrote a book. He's debating this Labor politician and this Catholic priest at 24 years old. It's a black and white TV, the archive footage. And I'm how it blew my mind at that age that he was doing that on national TV, continental TV, I guess, if you think of Australia that big. And so to be able to talk to him now, decades later about his book and revisit it, and he was so tickled about that, that we were coming up and found the book, and then we had someone that was talking about how the impact of it. And it was, wild to see that. And then to have, an interview that I did in December, which this episode will come out in the spring, with Bruce Koval, who was an amazing author. Wrote a series that I absolutely loved when I was in elementary school, and had no idea that he was bi. And that he wrote this other, short story about coming out. And so to discover authors that I had no idea in retrospect has just been really magical, for me. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing those. And so where I'm going with that is that we've got some texts that people probably don't know about, and then we've also got these, books for kids and for youth that I think is really important to be seeing those, given what's happening right now.
Yeah.
To do an episode that we had in December around The Color Purple, which is one of the most banned books in America. And so to have that conversation with that guest who's the 7th poet laureate of Portland, Maine, and for her to be talking about how she read it for the first time in 8th grade and its impact, and then how she kept coming back to it, how it kept having this impact on her over the years, was just wild to see. How did this affect a black queer girl reading this black queer story in The Color Purple, and then how she kept coming back to it was – it's everything you want to hear, right? As when you talk about the power of, LGBTQ books, but particularly in this one, because it's a banned book and because they're trying to ban it so often, it's wild to have and sit down and have that visceral conversation with somebody.
Should mention once again, both these shows, This Queer Book Saved My Life and The Gaily SHow, 2:00 hour on Saturdays right here on AM 950. Plus, of course, podcastable everywhere. I mean, a very popular podcast. And you go to your webpage, thisqueerbook.com, and you can find both The Gaily SHow and This Queer Book Saved My Life. You can find all the information about that there. It is the end of the year, and I'd like to take time with some of the guests to talk about the year that was. And let's, you talk about Minnesota. Sometimes it comes to get this flyover country. I don't think it got flyover country this year. After what the DFL did and passed these bills and passed these laws, a lot of people stood back and say, okay, wait, this is different. This is all of a sudden we became the envy of the West Coast and the East Coast. Where is it? How is Minnesota able to pull this off? We have the positive, but we also then have that negative, which is the Republicans in their post Roe v. Wade world needed a new villain to go out there and vilify. They've gone after the transgender community, the drag queen community, the LGBTQ community. They go out after it with aplomb because they feel as if they can still bring in those extremists that helped them with Roe v. Wade into the fray. to watch that hate unfold has been there. It's two sides of the coin. On one side, we live in a great state that is looking out for everyone. On the other side, there's a darkness that's coming out of the shadows that we need to make sure we definitely pay attention to in 2024. Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
I've just in many election cycles now have watched the center right, the far right organize around hating us, and they use it as an organizing principle. And I think that it kind of flies under the radar of how well entrenched it is that they can use hating queer people and hating trans people as a unifying factor. DOMA, in the 90s. Before that, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell bill in 2004, it was all the constitutional amendments, but they deliberately bring these things out and it gets out their vote. And I know that, in retrospect, people were like, oh, well, did it actually get out the vote or not? And I don't care about that. What I care about is that they deliberately, like in 2004, they got all those marriage amendments out there to ban gay marriage because they saw it as a deliberate, like, we're going to do this to get out the vote, regardless if it worked or not. In their minds, they're like, we're going to do this. We're going to bring this stuff forward because we believe it is going to do that. And so to see it now again happening, and so I think for a lot of people, they're like, why is this happening, now? And I'm like, well, it happened. It's been happening for a while, go all the way back to Anita Bryant, in the 70s with her, campaign and what they did in California, trying to kick out the gay teachers in the schools. They keep coming back to it because it works, unfortunately. And so that's where we get a little frustrated on the other side of the aisle, is that, drag queen story hour and, protecting trans rights isn't necessarily always at the top of their priority list policy-wise, but on the right it is. And so you get this weird, there's not this right response to what they're bringing forward necessarily. And so to see Minnesota goes so hard on and following, Rep. Lee Finke's. I mean, she had an amazing first term, in the legislature, and to watch folks get behind her on this legislation and to let her lead. A, important, and then B, to rally behind it and say, no, we're going to do this, and we're not going to, slow walk it. We've only got that, before and you would know this way better than I would, but a long time it felt on queer rights that it was, we have to go slowly, we've only got one vote in the Senate, so we can't, piss anybody off. And to watch Minnesota this time go, screw it. Who cares if we got one vote? We've got the power. Let's go for it. Let's do it. It's the right thing to do. It's going to help a lot of people. Let's just get it done. And every week I was like on my phone, I'm like, oh, they did what this week? They did what this week? Like, it was just wild to see them commit to that and run with it. And it does mean a lot. And we had a friend who was on this queer book, Save My Life, the book that she talked about, Julia Serrano's book, Whipping Girl, and she had just left Minnesota, moved into the, down south, and then that state became one of those, if we think that you're trans and getting trans health care, we'll rat on you. And we'll report you to the law and we'll prosecute you. And she just moved there, dumped all of her savings together. And she's like, I don't know what to do now. It's become so toxic and scary. How do I get back to Minnesota? How do I get back? And a lot of queer friends that are, in Florida, in Texas, that are, we don't want to live in the snow. And I'm like, would you rather have your rights and live and deal with some snow, as opposed to dealing with sunshine and, you're basically being prosecuted into oblivion. Yeah. At some point you're going to have to make that choice, and it sucks that you're going to have to make that choice. But, until we can, get some national Democrats doing what Minnesota TFL is doing, and get those protections, these are the choices that we have to make.
It takes time. Remember when the gay marriage amendment, the anti-gay marriage amendment was defeated? And I said on January, when they opened up and said, you guys know what you need to do now. And there was a 2-month debate. I'm like, do we want this? I said, we just told you we want it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is frustrating because it feels like the voters are grabbing them by the lapels and shaking them and saying, do this. And this time wasn't. And that's why I think it was so stunning. And the Representative Finke was just phenomenal with the leadership. In the face of politicians on the other side of the aisle who hated her with the fire of a million suns. They still didn't back down, and they got things done. And that goes all the way up to the governor's office. He signed all the bills, and that was just amazing. It does give you hope, but we know what's coming in 2024 because that's all they really have is to basically get hate out there as their motivating factor.
it's what they want,
Yeah.
which is the scary thing is it just. I guess I'll speak to my own experience and like particularly like with my family and navigating with it, where they're all, you know, a bunch of Trump voters and they're all MAGA. They were all in on it before it even was a thing. You know, MAGA was just sort of the naming of what they had been for so many years. And it's scary to me to see family members that are like, yeah, no, that's exactly what we want.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we want. And I'm like, but I mean, one of your family members and you're cool with this? They're like, yeah. You know, it's this idea that it's a choice, and so if they hate enough and they make it so horrible enough that somehow queer people will choose, you know, not to be queer anymore, to choose not to be trans or choose not to be, you know, bi or, you know, gay or lesbian, and it's so bonkers. And then to see, you know, in December, all of these Moms for Liberty folks who are, you know, they're all running around saying, you know, we have to protect the kids from the pedophiles. And then in Pennsylvania, one of the main organizers for Moms for Liberty is a literal registered pedophile.
and there's people that have been keeping lists that show that there aren't LGBTQ people that are doing this.
No.
There aren't transgender people that are doing this.
No.
And it makes you almost wonder, it's like, how much are you ignoring when you see it with your own eyes? But because it's not the narrative you want it to be, that's okay with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly on this. And yeah, for all the people like this, and I don't want to speak necessarily for your family, but when the people that are similar like to you, what your story just was, that is there, that have family then come back and say, well, you understand what I was saying. And no, I don't. And, you know, that's why your show is so freaking important. It's very important. I'm proud to be on a station with it. I'm proud to be, I'm absolutely flattered that you would come on and do this interview. It goes quick. It does go quick. This queer book saved my life, The Gaily Show. They are the 2:00 hour on Saturday. JP Boghossian, as always, thank you. Anytime you want to come back. My show is your show, and keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.